Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. This is Take the Lead, Change the Game, a podcast for women leaders looking to deepen their knowledge and skills and find enjoyment in the process. We're powered by Safra Leadership. Safra is a cohort-based coaching experience designed to fuel courage and ignite impact among women professionals. I'm Lindsay Gray, and this is Mindy Gulati, and we're the co-founders of Safra. Together, we bring a blend of leadership coaching, strategy, and lived experience to help women navigate challenges, seize opportunities, and lead with confidence.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here. Excited for our episode. We're almost at Thanksgiving coming up next week. And as we reflect on gratitude and the season of giving, we actually wanted to talk about what we're not thankful for. Gatekeepers, people who keep us out of opportunities. And so, Lindsay, what stands out to you when I mention this topic?
Yeah, I mean, when I, think of gatekeeping, I think of primarily, women keeping out other women, which is wild. But, Mindy, as you and I talk to, people that we're coaching and people that we interact with, we hear about this a lot, and how oftentimes for women, the primary barriers to their career advancement and getting where they want to go is because of other women in their lives, which is really sad. And so we want to make space for it, but we also want to offer sort of a reframing. So Mindy, tell us about how, your experience with gatekeeping, how we define gatekeeping, and let's go from there.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you bring up the women keeping out women, because I think a lot of times when we think of women's careers being either stifled or barriers, a lot of times people think it's men, but and not to say that men don't keep women out.
That doesn't happen.
Let's be clear. However, sort of anecdotally, in the 10 years that I've been working with women leaders and coaching, it's almost always other women that are keeping them out. And I mean, we could spend 5 hours going into the system analysis of this, of patriarchy and misogyny and sexism and civil rights and all of that. And we would love to have that conversation sometime, but that's there. Yeah. So we don't have the time, but that's there. But then what's also there is actually the title of our program, Scarcity to Abundance. And so I think a lot of people, a lot of women have been raised with a scarcity mindset around career and opportunities. And so I want to kind of talk about that when I think about gatekeeping, and when I talk about it, and actually I do a lot of trainings, particularly for like executive level in corporations and at law firms, partner level. I'm thinking about knowledge hoarding and opportunity hiding. So those are kind of the phrases. Is we hide opportunities from others, and we hoard knowledge, and we don't share that. And so again, in the season of giving, let's start sharing, let's not hide. When we're talking about gatekeeping, it's referring to behaviors and practices. So both kind of beliefs, behaviors, actions. They can be formal gatekeeping, they can be informal, that control access to opportunities, information, decision-making, resources, networks. In workplaces, which we'll talk about today, gatekeeping shows up when individuals decide who's allowed in, who's kept out, who gets visibility, who gets credit for things, who's seen as qualified, who gets exposure to certain situations, meetings, clients, etc. And gatekeeping can be very explicit, like, I'm not going to share this information or this opportunity with Lindsay. Like, I'm not going to do that. But a lot of times it's more subtle in that we just say, I don't want to necessarily hang out with this person. I'm not going to bring them with me. It can also be subtle in that you tend to want to associate with people only that you like, only that aren't a challenge to you, only that you're not intimidated by. So gatekeeping's, it's interesting. And I think if, the challenge, and we're going to challenge you at the end, but the challenge is to start really thinking about, where are you hoarding knowledge and where are you hiding opportunities for others? And then you have to drill into, why are you doing that? And it may ultimately be a scarcity mindset. It could also be some internalized bias, internalized sort of sexism and misogyny as well. So Lindsay, I guess, give us a little bit of the data, what we see in women's careers related to gatekeeping.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so much to say, but I'll just give you a couple stats. So, according to McKinsey and Company, which is a very, very large research and consulting company, when it comes to the first promotion step, so the first promotion, called often referred to as the broken rung, only 81 women are promoted for every 100 men. And again, as you say, Mindy, like, you know, that's from both genders, I'm sure, for, years and years of sexism and misogyny and all those things. But what that means is that we as women not only can't gatekeep, we also need to be sponsoring and promoting other women, because this early career slowdown, what it means is that women enter leadership tracks later, or they skip them altogether, and they build less what we call experience capital. And then, I mean, really, their career trajectory is just suppressed for the rest of their lives.
Mhm.
And a review by Harvard Business School found that women are less likely than men to have career-related conversations with their managers, and that ambiguity in criteria creates space for bias around who qualifies for advancement. And so, again, it's these thousands of, I mean, probably thousands of missed opportunities for
Mhm.
information, for access to certain spaces, all
Mhm.
of these things that ultimately create the stifling of growth professionally throughout an entire career.
Yeah, and this last point is really important. Is that gatekeeping isn't always this big event. It
No.
really is about these career related conversations. And, part of the work that I do is I do a lot of leadership, like effective leadership workshops. And almost one of the number one things across every industry, across the country, across sort of any way you want to slice and dice workplaces, managers routinely ask me, even this week, I've got this question: how do I have career related conversations with my employees? Like, I don't know how to do it. And so there's this other overlay, which is a lot of managers don't know how to bring this topic up. And then if the employee brings it up, the manager doesn't know how to talk about it. Like, because there's maybe not a clear trajectory for how you move up. But what happens is when you have all those things, those pieces that are working against you in your career, then when you also have somebody keeping you out, I mean, it's like almost impossible to go to the next level. And so what I always tell managers is, you do need to get comfortable. And I do a lot of workshops on how do you get comfortable with those conversations. But we also need to be pulling people along with us. So if I get a promotion and I've sort of figured out the matrix and I know how to get that, we need to go share that information. So this is what we talk about, information sharing. If I get a promotion, I should go and tell other women and other people in my organization, like, here's how it happened for me. What that transparency does is it allows for people to say, oh, okay, that's the roadmap. But also it disallows a company from being biased or excluding. And so like there's multiple reasons why we want to not have ambiguity in how do you move up. And that's the fair way to do it. But I see a lot of managers quite simply not knowing how to have these conversations, and then the person not asking. So the last thing I want to say about this is, if you want to advance in your career, you need to start saying it. You need to be your own advocate, because on the other side of it, I work with managers all the way up to executive level that don't know how to talk about this. They've never been trained. They've never thought about it. It's not their priority. And so we got to be mindful about that. But, all of us who have some sort of power to open doors, to share knowledge, we need to make that part of our daily, honestly, our daily efforts. And we'll kind of talk about some examples. And Lindsay, maybe you can share, and then we'll give some tips about how to do it, maybe how we do it in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, so first I'll give an example of sort of when I've seen gatekeeping play out for me. And then I can share a couple of examples of amazing women who have really opened doors for me. The example that comes to mind initially about someone who gate kept is when I was a young public defender in Colorado. There was a judge, a female judge, who was clearly harder on the women lawyers. And so, would question our competence more, would use a harsher tone. She didn't really have the power to like gatekeep opportunity because, we all had cases and they were not assigned by her. But it certainly was, I perceived it upon much reflection for many years, that it was like, I am the smart woman lawyer, and there are not, essentially it's the scarcity. I think it always almost, I would be hard pressed to think of a reason other than this sort of scarcity mindset. But this idea of like, there's only so many seats at the table for like competent women lawyers. And I'm here and I'm going to take my seat and I'm going to claim it. And like everybody else get out, or everybody but one, or whatever it might be. And so I experienced that more from her, that critical eye, than I did from any of the other judges that were male. My supervisor at the public defender's office, who was my very first supervisor in misdemeanor court, was the exact opposite and did everything that she could to certainly mentor me a ton, but then also just like encourage me, promote my work, provide opportunities for me. I remember I was like a first or second year lawyer, and I spoke at the statewide conference because she paved the way for me to have an opportunity, and she was fabulous. And then more recently in my career, there is a woman by the name of Karen Burgess, who I always think of when I think of women's sponsorship. She is a trial attorney, and so she finds herself in a lot of spaces that are still very male dominated. And she is such a force. Like, she's the president of like all these trial associations, but that gives her a lot of power and a lot of influence. And she uses that for many wonderful things, but she certainly has gotten me into rooms and into spaces that I otherwise would have zero access to. And so, I don't know how conscious that is for you, Karen, but it really has changed, some things about my career, giving me opportunities that I wouldn't have otherwise had. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going to shout one person out, and then I'm going to tell you give you another example that's not about me. But when I first moved to Austin, Texas in 2012, I was lucky enough to live in an awesome neighborhood and made friends with my neighbor named Amy Beckstead. Amy Beckstead is one of the best employment lawyers. So if you need employment law help, I'm going to plug her. Beckstead, Terry, ditto. Fantastic. But she invited me to places, and she's like, "You're new here." She was also fairly new to Texas, maybe been there a couple of years. She started a group called Mother Attorneys Mentoring Association, Mamas, in Austin. But she opened a lot of doors for me, and she was just very like inclusive and hey, come to this, come to that. And that honestly like helped me springboard my consulting practice. And so I'm going to shout her out, but she actively thinks about that. So she thinks about who should she include, who should she bring along. I do similar things. I get invited to a lot of stuff. So I'm always like, who should I bring? Who could I include? Who should I invite over? And not just think of the same easy people, bringing over people that maybe you think could use that introduction. But what I want to talk about a little bit is I often get hired to do keynote speeches about gatekeeping because I have a pretty hard-hitting take on gatekeeping. I pull no punches when I do these. And I was hired by a professional organization. I'm not going to name them, but they were really struggling with gatekeeping and this is an important, very influential membership organization for an industry. And what they were finding was the board positions that are very important for someone's career. It's a credential, it's on people's resumes, it opens in a ton of doors, tons of access to opportunities. But there was a lot of gatekeeping of only letting certain people in. So not only was there not diversity, but there was the same old folks and the same old companies going to it. And they asked me to come in and give a gatekeeping, hard-hitting workshop. So it wasn't quite a keynote. And I've given keynotes later because of it. But really what it was that group was feeling like, well, there's only this amount of seats, and so I got to protect this for me. So it was a scarcity mindset. Instead of feeling like, well, let's look at it from an abundance perspective. Sure, maybe there's only, 25 seats on this board. However, you can't be on this board forever. And what opportunities can we create to get people ready for the board when they roll off the board? And it's such an interesting conversation. And so, this was a while ago that I gave this was in 2021. And I've been working with this organization ever since. But when I went there, and I'm going to give you these reflection questions, because these are the questions I asked the group. And if you all do this, audience who's listening, it will make you a little bit more aware of how gatekeeping plays a role in your life. So I'm going to ask you these questions. Think about them. Think about when somebody has opened a door for you. So we talked about Karen and Amy, former bosses. So think about that. When has someone opened a door for you? Like, what did that really look like? It was an invitation. It was a maybe sharing knowledge, maybe sharing an opportunity with you. I text somebody a job posting yesterday and said, hey, I saw this. This would be great for you. I know the person. If you want me to connect you, that's opening a door. So think about when someone's opened a door for you. The next thing is think of when someone's closed the door. And the tricky part of this is you probably don't know how many times somebody has closed the door for you or kept it closed.
Yeah.
You probably don't know, but you actually probably do know at least one of them where you weren't invited, you were not included, you weren't given information you needed to succeed. So ask those questions. When did somebody open a door for you, and when did someone keep it closed? And now the trick, and this is what I'd love for people to really think about, is when have you opened a door for someone? And what did that look like? And what was the outcome? And that will make you feel warm and fuzzy. But more critical is when have you kept a door closed?
Yeah.
Because all y'all watching this have been a gatekeeper. I'm pretty certain of it.
Yeah.
And so turn the mirror on yourself. Why did you keep that door closed? It was probably because of a scarcity mindset. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, not just as a consultant, but as a law firm owner. And I found the best way to make my business grow is with people who do the exact same thing as me. So I've never had a scarcity mindset about it. I've always had abundance. There's enough work. But there's a lot of people who close doors for others because they're worried that they're their competition. And I'm just going to push you all to think about, when do you keep doors closed and why are you doing it? And if you are doing it because you're scared, because you think you should be the only one, I would challenge you that you have to address that mindset. It's not fair. It's not reality. There is enough business and money and opportunities and promotions out there. There's enough for all of us if we go after it. But too many times we're so scared to hoard our knowledge, hoard our resources, that we never get to see the beauty and abundance of just sharing. So I'll get off my soapbox with that. But I did want to leave you all with a couple tips to actually start thinking about. So
yeah, I think when I find myself tempted to gatekeep in some way, shape, or form, it 100% goes back to either a scarcity mindset or just plain old good insecurity. Like, it's just the, like, I don't fully have deep, peaceful knowledge that, like, there's something that makes what I do special, or that I'm good at what I do. You know what I mean? There's like some deep-seated insecurity that makes me want to like keep the circle tight in whatever way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
In terms of tip, Mindy, you wanna go first and give a couple tips?
Yeah, I mean, I think start with those questions as a tip. The other tip I would have is when you get invited to something, an event, ask somebody to go with you that wasn't invited. That's easy. If you're a manager, a leader of some kind, please have those career related conversations with your team and push yourself to know how to coach them up. And then if you're suffering from scarcity mindset, which most people are, start reading and listening to podcasts, articles about how do you shift it, because it's a mindset shift. So it doesn't happen overnight. But really dive into that, because once you look at like, oh my gosh, the more people I help, the more I will be helped. The more abundance I give, the more abundance comes back to me. It's real life. It really happens. And I will say, I had a scarcity mindset about, a lot of things as a child and into early adulthood and probably into my early years as a public defender. And I had to just shift the mindset. And since then, opportunities are abound. And I try to share those with as many people as I can.
Yeah. I think a big tip that I would give is just practice those conversations. I mean, we've talked about a couple of different conversations. One is managers and direct reports talking about like opportunities for growth. And so managers, like if you are a manager, get comfortable having those conversations with your peeps. If you are a direct report and you are managed and want to talk about that, talk about like have the conversation. And I think 90% of the time we struggle with these conversations because we have not framed in our head how we want to say it. And so then we're uncomfortable. And so then we just don't.
Mhm.
And the same goes for asking for a connection. As I have done more and more of this, it becomes so much easier because I have like 3 or 4 different ways of asking for a connection. Or like one of the things I hear most commonly is people want to connect with someone to talk about like referral pipelines, right? Like I'd love for you to send me business or whatever. And they don't know how to ask. And so it's this really scary thing, but there's like a few ways you can say it, such as like, I'd love to get together to talk about how we can support each other's work, or I want to, talk about the synergy between what the two of us do, or whatever. Like and you have to find sort of like a turn of phrase that is authentic to you. But that's a really clear example that I hear all the time about like, oh, I'm worried about putting them out if I send them this email, or I worry that it sounds markety or whatever. You want to be clear what you want to do, but like find a way that sounds good and authentic to you. And then it becomes like a million times easier.
Yeah. And then when someone asks you for a referral or asks you to help, like be helpful.
Yeah.
And so don't be the gatekeeper. They're coming to you because it should feel good when somebody comes to you because it means you have some sort of influence and power and they look up to you in some way. And so definitely, don't close that gate. The last thing I'm going to sort of say is I would love to challenge everyone to think about, is there someone you can open a door for? So really think about that. And I don't want it to just be generally, I'm going to invite people. No, is there like someone that you think you can open a door for? And like, what are you going to do for them? Make that commitment, make that plan, and then implement it. We'd love to hear comments. If you do it, comment on one of our social media feeds. I'm committed to doing this. I'm always trying to find ways to open doors. But I would ask y'all to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the challenge. I'm going to be thinking about it. We will be out next week for Thanksgiving because next Thursday is Thanksgiving. So we will see you all back in December and have what is hopefully a wonderful and restful time next week. So thanks, y'all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.